good afternoon, and foremost, thank you all for sticking it out with us. It's hard to see all of you as well with the lights, which is great, but thank you for being here. We know it's a long day. We want to start by just giving our thanks to Mark and Laura and Brett and Neil for everything that they do to put this on, and for me, for continuing to inviting me back year after year. Sometimes I question if I will be invited back. Hopefully I say the right things, and we all do. But it's truly a pleasure for us to be here. And I promise you all that despite the title of the presentation, and if you're sitting there thinking, or you're at home online, well, I don't work in a corporate sector, this really has no applicability to me, I would argue that what we're about to hear from these brilliant panelists are tools, techniques, strategies, ideas, and concepts that transcend any particular sector. They're not partisan. They apply everywhere. So whether you work in a school, in the community, in a healthcare setting, in any type of agency, I implore you to listen. These are three brilliant minds. And it's a real honor for me not only to be up here with three brilliant people, but three people who are near and dear close friends. So it is truly a privilege. I think for maybe some of us, myself included, before I worked doing behavioral threat assessment and management and workplace violence prevention in the corporate sector, it really never dawned on me that that was a setting where this was something that we needed. I would go to the grocery store, get my groceries, and I'd pay and go home. I'd go to my favorite retailer, buy the clothes, and I don't think too much of it other than I probably spent more at Target than I should have today. And you leave and you don't really think about all the different pieces of the puzzle that go together to make that experience one that's enjoyable for the most part. All I knew, and I think the only thing that a lot of people know, is that we hear about the small percentage of these catastrophic events that have a significant impact. We think about El Paso and Walmart. We think about recently Target in Austin. We think about a bank, Old National in Louisville. These are all corporate settings, but that's all we hear is when something goes wrong. What you don't see and what you don't hear is the amazing work that's being done behind the scenes to make everything go really well 99.9% of the time. And admittedly, I was ignorant to that as well until I got in that space and could see it for myself and be a part of what I hoped would be a solution. I knew that I had to check my ego at the door, that this wouldn't be something that I could do with absolute guarantee, that I could save every life. I don't wear a cape. I'm not superhuman. None of us are. But we commit to this work knowing that the efforts, small or large, that we take may make a difference. And one life saved, one life improved is a success story. But unfortunately, we don't hear about those enough, and we only hear about the tragedies and the negative outcomes. So I want to, of course I leave all my questions back behind us. I want to kind of allow all of you to get a little bit of an inside scoop to know who the people are that are making it that you can go to your favorite store, to your bank, to any sort of location that you shop in or you go to for whatever reason, and have that experience where you can go in safely and go home safely. I'm going to steal that from you. Thank you. So I want to start with one of my favorite people on the planet right next to me. One, because we love colors. We go well together. And is just one of the most likable people ever. And I think that's not something that people often think of when they think of corporate. Right, necessarily, but you defy that. So, Melissa, if you could tell folks a little bit about yourself first.
Hi, I'm Melissa Muir. I've been in HR, human resources, for more than 25 years, and 15 of that I've been involved in threat assessment and workplace violence prevention. And for me, because I'm guessing there are not a lot of HR people that are in spaces like this, and yet I think upstream, we have such an incredible opportunity to prevent the things that downstream we're seeing or that we're talking about in situations like this. I work with Pinkerton Consulting with organizations all over the world and all over the country, usually when there's a threat by an employee, an ex-employee, or a client or customer who's escalated to the point where they're very concerned on behalf of the company or their employees. And I had the great fortune with Dr. Roselle to introduce me to Laura Ellsworth a couple of years ago and invite and come here and see the incredible kind of synergy and overlap between the things we do. Thanks.
Well, I want to start with you, and thank you. And I think it's a nice segue into the question that we talked about to start this off. Now, in the private sector, we have found that organizations are very quick sometimes to rush to remove employees because they exhibit some sort of problematic behavior, a behavior that causes them to feel uncertain or frightened. What can you tell all of us about the concerns with these rushed efforts to quickly remove a problem thinking that will solve the risk and solve the concern from the behavioral threat assessment and management perspective, and what are the answers?
Sure, if I had the answers, this would be great. Punchline, I do not have all the answers, but I see some really interesting things. And from the HR percent, one of the things that started this conversation was that we're doing a lot in our organizations, especially some of our large organizations that are setting the model for how we're helping victims, how we're helping survivors of things, how we're helping people safety plan, how we're setting policies and things in place to protect our employees. And what we often are forgetting is that the people that are committing some of the things we're talking about this week are also often our employees, and that we're forgetting that the people who are taking those actions can be our employees too, and we don't have a lot of systems or policies in place for that. And so for me, that's kind of what started a lot of this conversation. And I'll give an example. I worked recently with a large organization that had an employee that was a reasonably good performer, but had started having some challenges in his life, and they were coming over into the workplace. And he commented, in particular, he was quite open that he was suffering some mental health challenges, had asked for some leave off. He was quite clear with people. What started happening, though, was he started making threatening comments to his coworkers. And then they started escalating, and there was a lot of hate in them, and there was references to firearms. It was all the things that result in calls to people like me. So when our threat management group got together, forensic psychologist, a certified threat manager, former law enforcement, and me on the people side, we made a number of recommendations, including, hey, slow down. We're worried that this person they're taking advantage of health services. By all means, keep those continuing. And the organization chose instead to immediately separate the person, with health insurance ending in 3 days at the end of the month. They did it at the end of the month. Right? And the reason they did it was violation of the code of conduct. We cannot tolerate that behavior. We would set bad precedent if we were to do so. And we have to protect our employees. And the best way we can protect our employees is to get rid of the problem employee. So just as you said, and again, that was over. They had paid us to make recommendations, including think about how you do that. And what I see is the risk of liability is so high, but we're looking at liability in terms of liability. Will I get sued if I don't take an action? Will our reputation be damaged if a current employee does X? And what we're not thinking of is the greater liability to the community, because now we've accelerated the risk, right? We didn't get rid of the problem, we created a new one, because think of all the protective factors that organization had. His identity was tied to his employment. His financial stability was tied to it. His community, his friends were all colleagues, the few that he had, I will say by the end. And his dignity was tied. So when they ended it so quickly, all of those protective factors were gone, every one of them. So I think that's what I see is the problem. I think that is a typical pattern. What I see as the answers are the things we're talking about here, but in the organizational sense. So, for example, I talked about flexible thinking. Are you kidding? Like, why am I so wedded to the way we've always done things that I can't make an exception? And I'll give an example from the human resource side. The Employee Assistance Program, EAPs, are wonderful resources, right? You can get financial counseling, you can get legal advice, you can get mental health assistance. So I looked into what if we gave somebody, when they left our employment, what I call a forever EAP plan. And we just continued it. And I called, and the provider was like, I don't know. But if you just don't mark them as inactive, we'll continue. And guess what that cost? It was $1.90 a month. We did 10 years, right? We would like this person to be able to get assistance anytime, anywhere. If they do that, I don't know, but that's a protective factor that costs us very little that we can do. We are so stuck, though, sometimes in they hurt our feelings, or they treated us badly, or they said mean things about us, or they scared our colleagues, that we would rather say goodbye and send the problem out into the community and make it larger than fix it. So I think flexible thinking about how we say goodbye is an incredible protective factor. The dignity in the conversation that the person will remember for the rest of their life. Let's make it a good one. It's their last impression, and we can do well. And the other thing that I think was really valuable was Aaron Stark yesterday talking about the people who deserve love the least are the ones who need it the most. And this is a little uncomfortable for an HR person to talk about love in the workplace. And yet what I'm going to say is the compassion with how we do it. For example, we're going to extend your EAP benefits. We're going to cover your 18 months of health insurance because it's a minimal cost, right? For $10,000 versus the hundreds of thousands in security that company has paid, right? We're going to do it politely. What about this? I'm HR. I help people get jobs all the time. What if I offered to help this person with job search activities? So thinking about ways we can be creative and flexible in our thinking, but ways that we can show compassion and love even for the people that we're saying goodbye to.
Oh, what a mic drop response. Wow.
That's
Yeah, we'll
That's
take
my
that.
answers. Thank you.
And thank you for your time. No, brilliantly stated. I think Melissa hit on something that is really, really critical. Sometimes we only think about the tangible losses, the income, the benefits, but we don't think about what I like to call hidden red flags that can emerge as a result of the decisions that we make. The loss of dignity, the loss of group connection, the loss of your community, the sense of shame. These are powerful emotions that will drive people to do things that they may not otherwise do out of desperation to meet a basic human need, and that is sometimes to just feel connected and valuable and significant. So now that we know that sometimes we can push the gas a little too hard and we need to take a step back, and I think you just made a brilliantly compelling argument for why and articulated beautifully. I'm going to turn over to our next panelist, Matthew Spangenberg, to introduce himself and talk about what are the things, Matt, that we can do that maybe we can even avoid getting into that pickle of keep them, say goodbye, as Melissa said. What can we do more proactively to the term that's often used in our field, stay the left of bang, and proactively support folks?
Yeah, thank you. So my name is Matthew Spangenberg, and I work with JP Morgan Chase. I've been there for 25 years now, and I've been doing behavioral threat assessment and management for 20 of those years. I have a team of individuals that work along with me that focus on threats of violence targeting the firm. To give you an idea of scope, when we started back in 2019, we managed approximately 1,600 cases. This year we'll have over 5,000 cases. So you see, as you build it, they will come. And if you respond to people reporting concerns, they'll continue reporting those concerns. That being said, with response to how we would manage these cases, one thing that I started off with early on was developing a scope of work. Exactly what types of cases will my team be responsible for? And as we developed that, we had to keep in mind also the staffing, right? So when I started back in 2019, we had 3 plus me. Present day, just in North America, we have 15 people now, and we have another 3 full-timers across the globe. So again, as the work comes in and as you respond to it, people see that you're actually helpful. Any program at all, we all know that training and awareness is paramount. And one of the things that we did across the years is we started self-evaluating how effective are we. And one of the things as we were self-reflecting that we realized was that as I developed that scope, I was very narrow-minded in determining what a threat would be considered, which would take it to my team's level. But as we were successful across those years, we then thought, should we make this better? Is there more that we could be doing? And so Dr. Park Dietz oftentimes makes reference to the fact that conduct issues that go unchecked can spiral into a workplace violence concern down the road. And we want to take that a step further. So we started thinking about what are the pre-incident indicators, or the things that would be warning signs to us before threats, and then what are the indicators that would be pre-even conduct issues. And so we took a look back. We have 28,000 plus cases now that we have good data for. We looked at our HR systems, we looked at our other internal systems, we worked with our EAP partners, and we're able to determine that almost all of our cases, with very few exceptions, we had documented incidents of people who were going through certain life events that were remarkable and always showed up whenever we had cases that we worked. Now that led to a ton of false positives, obviously, because lots of people go through traumatic life events. Lots of people have stressful times in their lives, but we felt it was important to devote resources to actually filter through that and to be able to help those individuals. So for us, from a real life strategy perspective, one of the things that we did to kind of crank the dial up a little bit was to develop training that's mandated for all of our employees, so almost 400,000 employees and contractors. It's annual training now that just got reapproved, and it's focused on recognizing concerning behaviors, and it's focused on helping people understand how to go about reporting those concerning behaviors. So that's one step, is making sure that people know what to do. But the second step behind that is then actually following up and acting. And so that's where we found ourselves in a position where my case volumes, mine alone, went up 19% the first month that some of this training rolled out. Now, that was a small portion of the reports that we actually received. So my partners in HR and EAP were not very happy with me those first few months. But we did find that we were able to get lots of help to a lot of people. And to Melissa's point earlier, if it cost $1.19 a month for EAP benefits, we had so many things that we were paying for that we weren't utilizing, that now we're actually able to start utilizing those things to help support the employees. So that's one strategic way that we went about helping support.
Yeah, getting ahead of the curve before we have to face the difficult decision about what to do. And I think you hit a really key point that is thematic across the summit, is that this is an all hands on deck community effort, an integrated community approach. The ability to give people in your community, your employees, your workforce, a voice, and you saw the benefits of that. Quick anecdote, when I was working in the healthcare sector, and I know it's not corporate, but it's relevant, my first year doing the work, we received about 37, give or take, reports from our staff, our community, to let us know about concerning behavior. That was pre any training, giving them the awareness of what they needed to look for. We can tell people, see something, say something, but we're very negligent sometimes about telling them what to look for. And it sounds like you've done that really effectively. When we rolled out something similarly, in or around 2018, by the time I left that role in my final year, which was 2023, that's not a significant amount of time, I went from 37 reports to just under 1,300. If you give people a voice to speak up and empower them to affect safety and change in your community, you will have a more effective process and safer community. This is all well and good, but part of any strategy is not just thinking about how do we make this work, it's planning for the things that get in our way, the obstacles and barriers that we have to come and the pushback that we often receive. So I'm going to turn this now to Dr. Bruno Diaz, our final speaker on our panel, to tell the audience who you are, but also to talk about some of the primary barriers that are complex in nature or even simple that organizations are facing to maybe prevent us from doing what Matt has done so well over the last 20 years with his team and what Melissa described.
Sure. Bruno Diaz, some people call me Buenos Dias, happens all the time. I've been dealing with that for a while. But in terms of my corporate experience, I worked for General Motors. I managed corporate security investigations, which included workplace violence preventions for all of the facilities in the US and Canada. And I'm an instructor for the Gavin DeBecker Advanced Threat Assessment Academy, where I get to teach professionals from some of the leading companies in our country and beyond. And also I'm the co-founder and co-principal of Key Operational Insights, and our customers include the corporate sector. To the question, Matt, I think there is particularly in HQ environments, there is a over-reliance on physical security and a belief that, hey, we have all of these barriers. Our offices are semi-permissive environments, so if we are facing with a threatening situation or if we have a threatening individual, our physical security measures are going to keep us safe. And sometimes they focus on that and they lose sight on the value of prevention and prevention activities and getting ahead of the problem so that you don't ever have to activate the physical security measures. The other component is while corporations are doing a pretty good job doing what we call in the community soft landing, which is a more humane way with more dignity and extension of services to off-ramp an employee. Use better terminology. Instead of saying it's a termination, it's your next chapter. We're going to focus on getting you ahead on your next chapter, your next adventure, however it may be. Changing terminology, thinking about the extension of benefits. While that's going really, really well, and I appreciate that, there is a lack of systems in place and frameworks in place to share that information with local law enforcement or local partners so that they now know that this individual maybe is in a fragile state. We are providing them additional support services, but there's an expiration date tied to that. And that's a gap that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. You talked about the importance of not focusing on one aspect of safety, not just physical security, not just prevention aspects like threat assessment and management, not just cybersecurity, but the totality of all and how they all kind of work synergistically together. I think that's really important. So what I'm inferring from that in the sense that we're running into problems of siloed entities within our organizations and maybe even with our community partners who we could use in this idea of doing this collectively is more effective. So I'm going to come back to Melissa and ask, so what do we do? And we hear this all the time in our lane. How do we break down these silos?
Be nicer to HR. Yeah. Okay. Because everybody unifies around disliking HR. And so I think that would be a lot of it. Joking aside, I think there is a lot, I work a lot with security and HR, and there's a lot of tension and barriers between us. And I think it comes to, I've got to manage like 6,000 things, and they all have at least 4 initials, right? FMLA, FLSA, ADA, HIPAA, FERPA, all of the things, and they don't talk to each other very well. And shock, in this administration, a lot of it's in flux. We're not even sure what some of the rules are right now. So we tend to be a little protective of the information. We're protective of the organization. We're risk averse. So we don't want to share stuff that might get us in trouble or get the organization in trouble. And so sometimes people come in and like tell us all about what this person's doing, and we're protecting that employee. Sometimes at the downside to the rest of the organization. What I see though that is really good, and I'm going to give my silly trading card example if I can. So we had a number of employees, this was just before the pandemic, and lots of new employees, and people didn't know each other, right? People had been there a long time, didn't know the new people had no idea that there was, executive and anyway. So we set out this trading card thing, and we gave everybody trading cards. It was voluntary, but they had their information, what department, and then on the back things like, favorite, your celebrity crush, favorite thing to eat, whatever those things were, they could fill it out. Well, what happened was so interesting was people were trading them, right? And we got little prizes, and the goal was we wanted everybody in the organization to know the name of every other person in the organization by the end of the year. And there were prizes attached. We have some very competitive people in our midst. What was interesting was our security arm, going back to your physical security. Well, physical security was only as good as the people you let piggyback through the locked door, right? Like you just let somebody in. Once we had the cards, people would stop, and now instead of being uncomfortable, I don't know if it's an employee or not, so I'm gonna let them in because I'm not gonna ask, we would stop and say, do you have a card? And they would introduce themselves, and like, our security let us know that the piggybacking, right, the letting people in without their own badge card went to virtually 0 after a couple of weeks of this. So my message of this was, once we had some engagement activities, some ways, and our security partners was like, this is cool, right? Now they want to help us, and we would love the help, right? We're understaffed, so suddenly it was like, how could we support your engagement activities? Because we see the immediate effect. Now people are more engaged, they have more friends, right? And there's great studies out there that if you have a best friend at work, your organization has 50% fewer safety accidents, right? And safety accidents is a broad thing sometimes around violence. So I guess for me, I think the way we break it down is not being so all or nothing, but at looking at ways we can support each other's aims that better us all. Because now we're talking all the time, and now we're sharing, and now we want to work together instead of Department of No. I mean, not that I would call HR the Department of No, but there.
My celebrity crush is my wife, just in case she's listening. I want to make sure she knows that. No, I think that's great, and I think what it speaks to is about getting to know other people, familiarity. One thing I think that can be very helpful as well, to piggyback off this, we've used the word piggyback a lot, is, let's say you take those different entities that Bruno talked about. You got physical security and the threat assessment team, et cetera. I think part of the reason we have breakdowns and silo formation is that we just don't know what other people do. We don't take the time to ask them. I'm not an HR professional, but I work closely with them. My responsibility, if Melissa's on my team, is to take the time when I get there, maybe to sit with Melissa and say, tell me about your job. Tell me what you do. What's your scope of function? Why do you like what you do? How did you get into this work? To give me an appreciation for not only what her role could be on the team, but just for her passion, to build some connection and engagement and rapport and have a relationship. So we can start at that point, because it's difficult, I think, to work as part of a team, which is how this all functions most effectively, when you don't really know who you're sitting at the table with, or you can't appreciate what matters to them. I think it's important to listen and focus on that. I'm going to come back to Bruno. We're going to shift a little bit, definitely related, but as is well known to all of us and probably most of you in the room, these incidents, targeted violence, particularly sentinel events, mass attacks, they get a lot of significant exposure through the media. And I know you've got some slides to share here, so we'll have those pulled up. From your perspective, and there are a lot of different opinions about this, but what is the impact of the media on workplace violence prevention, or violence prevention in any setting, really, and where do you see opportunities for improvement?
Sure, and first I want to preface by saying I believe that freedom of the press is essential to our democracy, and they play a very important role. And I think this is a conversation about letting ethics, not censorship, drive how these events are covered. And I think that we haven't really fully evolved, or the media hasn't, in terms of frameworks for doing this type of coverage responsibly. We're living in an environment where, particularly for young people, the line between fame and infamy is becoming blurred. It's so important for young people to be known, for them to be liked. And if I cannot find meaning in my life because of the risk factors that I'm facing, depression, whatever it may be, I may find meaning in death, right? And the way we cover this, you can be a genius like Einstein and make the cover of Time, or you can do something that's going to shock the conscience of society, like the Columbine shooters did, and you can be in the same cover of the same magazine. So that ability for a person to reach an elevated status and recognition becomes extremely rapid and easy to achieve. And we're also getting into a selective perception problem, right? Where we are maybe having discussions about that perhaps insurance companies should do a better job with coverage, rates should be lower, while justifying that maybe because of those reasons, violence is acceptable. I blurred the name and some of a portion of the face of the United Healthcare CEO killer. I'm not going to mention the individual by name because I don't want to contribute to their campaign of infamy. But there's discussions and headlines where a question is even being posed: is this individual a hero or a murderer? Which it's really interesting. And one of the pictures that you see there, I'll show you here in a second. It's from one of the legal accounts on the left. They're generating funds for the legal proceedings for the defendant. And you're seeing people donating and saying, hey, let's go ahead and kill other CEOs. And they proceed to name the CEO for Amazon and other major corporations. And these comments are coming from, if you do some investigation, it's from sometimes parents, from family members, or maybe people that have been impacted by a corporation. And again, it's a very dangerous environment where these individuals can achieve sainthood status online because of their violent actions. And as it's the case being displayed here with people getting tattoos, a video game character now having a new identity and a new symbology. And I think that's very problematic. Additionally, I just want to show you this, and I'm sorry, Matt, I'm almost done here. I don't want to take too much time from our panelists, but I selected a major news network, and this helps highlight how we have made significant strides in the way we cover self-harm and suicide. The picture on the left involves a case that involved suicide, and as you can see on the bottom of the picture, there's a caution, a redirect, right? If you're thinking about harming yourself, or if you know someone who is, 988 is a resource for you. I see that as an example of ethical coverage, of an evolution, maturation on how violence is being covered. While the same network, this was a few weeks apart, is just simply displaying the homicide of a CEO, the United Healthcare CEO, no caution, no redirect, no warning, simply hit play, and we'll go ahead and pause 1 second before that individual is gunned down. And I think we should learn a little bit more about how we cover self-harm and suicide, and maybe move that to targeted violence. It's an area of an opportunity for sure.
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, we've definitely seen more of what some of us refer to as this altruistic homicide, kind of this martyr that for a cause, for a purpose, that I will do this because I think it matters. And it's not to say that nobody is entitled or have a right to feel a grievance or aggrieved about something. That's not something we can challenge. What you feel is what you feel. But how you respond to it, where we're seeing this very concerning trend where there is almost cheerleading for these altruistic acts of murdering others who become scapegoats for representing the thing about which I am most aggrieved. And it dehumanizes, and we forget that these are people with families, spouses, children, people that are loved, and people that love others. So I'm going to come back to Matthew here. Now that we have an understanding of kind of what makes violence prevention in the corporate world kind of function a little bit, and given we're here at the Eradicate Hate Summit, where networking and opportunities to cultivate these partnerships are right here, they're in this room, maybe a few less because the cocktail hour, we get that we're between you and that experience, that maybe a little bit less. Can you speak to the importance of partnerships in their role in helping kind of us effectively actualize a robust violence prevention? And I know you know this very well from direct practical experience over the last 20 plus years.
Yeah, so, I've been very blessed. A lot of people talk to me about our program because of our growth, and they ask, how were you able to accomplish that? And the honest answer is that 51% of that, at least, is luck, just being in the right place at the right time with the right audience. And for a number of years before we stood up this official program in 2019, I acted like an internal consultant with one other person. And we would basically just consult with people. We really had no idea what kind of metrics we had with case volumes or anything. And people weren't forced to call us. They'd call us because they felt they needed our help. And other times people thought that they knew better. But the fact of the matter is that for many years, we were developing relationships with partners across human resources, employee assistance program, legal, and others who believed in us and who we believed in, and quite honestly, who we needed. They had the expertise that we didn't have. And so, as we had some organizational changes in 2019, my coworker had decided it was a good time to retire. I think they were actually planning on sunsetting our program until we had a conversation around that, and that's just a different story for a different day. But the truth is, the firm recognized the importance of having a team that does this type of work. And if it wasn't for the partners and that we kind of developed the partnerships in our network with the Employee Assistance Program, legal, and others to speak up for us, I don't know that they would have actually been able to recognize it to the extent that they did and the value of the program. So that enabled us, when we built it out, we made it a point also, because we know all of the contributions that they made, to, as much as we could, to intentionally involve them in all of our processes. So it's not just the security guy sitting back making decisions, or a team of security professionals making decisions. So we developed workflows for all of our major case types when we developed our scopes of work. And every one of those workflows had a potential nexus to legal, to HR, to EAP, and those other partners, to show that not only were we just doing this because we wanted to include them, but also highlighted just the amount of value that they bring to this equation. And so, they have been with us from the start. They helped us kind of reiterate the program over the years. We have a couple different functions that we utilize to monitor people of concern long term that they're a part of. So we regularly meet every 2 weeks to talk about the cases that continue to concern us post-termination, or even if it's a client, post-client exit. And so they're an integral part of that process. We also have an emergency team that we pull together for events that we don't have time to wait for a partner to get assigned, and they're parts of that process as well. So they're just, the answer to that is that if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't exist, or if we did exist, it wouldn't be a resilient program. It would be a program to call it a program with a policy to follow. And a quick story, because I heard Bruno make a comment earlier, and it kind of set off a flag in my head. Being in the corporate world for so long, the truth is that I talked about the internal partnerships, but there's also external partnerships as well, right? And for a long time, me being in the corporate space, I was very hesitant to reach out to law enforcement. I would reach out to the Secret Service, I would reach out to the FBI, but when it came to local law enforcement, which is the point that Bruno made earlier, I was always hesitant because you lose positive control when you engage law enforcement. And we had some cases where we would call law enforcement and the dispatcher would send out a beat cop to go knock on the door and tell somebody to knock it off, right? That's not always gonna give us a good response. As we learned that there are trained law enforcement professionals across the country, what we now do is, if we have an area that we're not sure that we have a contact, we contact someone that we know local or close by and say, do you know anybody over there that we can engage? And a win for us with engaging law enforcement is I was actually doing some work on a case outside of my organization where an individual made some comments online that were highly concerning to the average person, but not something that would be actionable by the courts. But this organization was very aggressive with the courts in asking for help, and they did a nationwide extradition for him. They're gonna pull him across the country for these comments. Ultimately, he would probably be arrested, be released shortly thereafter, and be more angry. And he had a lot of stabilizers in his life that they would be pulling him from. And at a conference, we had the U.S. Marshals that were there. We had the local sheriff's department that was local to this person as well. And we were able to, the marshals were getting ready to knock down the guy's door, basically. And they put a halt on it to give the local sheriff's department an opportunity to go meet with him and to establish a relationship, let him know that it's only a matter of time, it's not if, but it's when, and to let him know that they would be there to help support him when he was ready to come back. They even went proactively to make arrangements with his own mother to pick up his daughter from school that day. So like a real coordinated effort where I had always thought of, to make myself look horrible here, I didn't want to unleash the thugs, right? I was concerned about getting law enforcement engaged, to now I realize these guys got softer gloves than what I would have ever imagined. And in some cases, softer gloves than what we have in the corporate environment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we have about a minute left. And for those of you who were in attendance yesterday, and I was on a panel and I shared a story that highlighted this, and I'm not going to reiterate the whole story, but what Matthew just shared, in paralleling what I had shared yesterday with that case vignette, mirrors something that stood out to me up here. And it's something that I think of Melissa all the time when she tells us that words matter. I love that. It's meaningful. And I want to call attention. I had some profound exit statement I was going to make here, but this is on the spot. That if you listened to, hopefully the four of us, but at least the three of us today, none of them used I statements. They were all we. We. They're here individually representing other people, a team, an organization, a workforce, the people. And I think it's important for us all to remember that we think about these folks that carry out these acts as almost like other or different than us, but they're not. Each of these people are all of us, one moment away from now, under different circumstances, just by virtue of being human. If we can humanize those that have a tendency to dehumanize, then I think that is our effort to eradicate dehumanization. And I think that is at the core of this. So I know our time is up. You've got a cocktail hour to get to. We do. We all have a cocktail hour to get to, yes. But thank you all for sticking it out with us. Thank you again to Laura, to Mark, to Brett, to Neil. If the latter two are here, I can see Mark and Laura. Thanks for having me back. And the final thing I want to say is I would be remiss not to say hi and thank you to my mom, who has joined for the 4th consecutive year virtually. So thank you to all of you, and we hope to see you all back here bright and early tomorrow for the final day of the summit.